single cruel sentence can shatter a decade of friendship. One impulsive email, fired off in anger, can derail a career you've built for years. A reaction lasting only seconds can lock you in regret for a lifetime. You've likely felt it. The heat rising, the words spilling out, the door slamming shut. And then the silence afterward, where regret whispers, and then regret whispers, "Why did I hand them my power?" The Stoics saw it with piercing clarity. Events arrive empty. An insult is only sound in the air. A setback is only a moment in time. What gives them power is the meaning you carve into them, the story you wrap around the sting. Modern psychology names these triggers and the narratives we tell ourselves. The wound is not always the world itself. More often, it is the interpretation we etch into the moment. So imagine this. If you mastered the art of not reacting, if nothing could disturb your inner calm, who would you become? Before you can rewrite that story, you must first create a pause. That pause is Rule 1. Rule 1. The sacred pause. Reclaiming your breath. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself that the first instant, the spark before a fire, was where his freedom lived. He knew that once anger had hardened into rage or fear into panic, the soul was already captive. But in that fragile sliver of time, before the wave crested, he still held the power to stand firm. The moment of pause is where sovereignty begins. This is not only philosophy, it's physiology. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who endured the concentration camps of Nazi Germany, described the essence of human freedom with haunting precision. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Modern neuroscience confirms it. The pause is not a poetic metaphor. It's a neurological fact. When you take a breath before reacting, you flip a switch in your nervous system. Instead of accelerating into fight or flight, you press the brake pedal of the parasympathetic system. Your body remembers safety. Your mind clears. That small delay literally rewires impulse into intention. No one embodied this sacred pause more gracefully than Fred Rogers. On his television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, silence was his signature. In an era of fast talkers and endless noise, Rogers would stop, sometimes for 5 or even 10 seconds, before replying to a question. To adults, the pause felt awkward, even unsettling. But to children, it felt like a miracle. His silence was never empty. It was full of presence. They knew he was really listening. They knew his words would matter when they came. There's a famous moment when Rogers was asked a difficult, deeply personal question on live television. The lights were hot, the cameras rolling, the audience restless. He didn't rush. He closed his mouth and sat in silence. 1 second, 2, 3. The crew fidgeted. The audience wondered if he'd frozen. But then, finally, Rogers spoke, with a gentleness so precise, so thoughtful, that it brought tears to the room. His silence had not been hesitation. It had been respect, reflection, love, woven into a pause. You and I may not command a television audience, but we face our own stage every day. The heated email, the stinging remark, the impulse to lash out before we think. Most of us react instantly, but you don't have to. You can pause. You can breathe. So here's the practice. When provoked, stop and take 3 slow breaths. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. That's all it takes. 3 breaths buy you 15 seconds of freedom, enough time for the fire to shrink from an inferno to a spark, enough space for choice to return. Try it now with me. Inhale for 4, hold 1, exhale for 6. Again, and once more. Notice how even in this brief moment, the world slows down. The storm outside feels less urgent. At first, this will feel clumsy. You'll forget. You'll react too quickly and regret it afterward. But repetition reshapes the brain. Each time you pause instead of pouncing, you carve a deeper groove in the neural pathways of control. Over weeks and months, people will begin to notice. They'll see how unshakable you are in meetings, how unbothered you seem by insults, how you choose your words with care. Your calm will unsettle those who try to provoke you, because you no longer hand them your power. This is not weakness. It is strength of the rarest kind. Imagine receiving a cruel text and realizing you don't need to answer at all. Imagine standing in a storm of criticism and responding with silence that disarms the attack. This is the pause in action, shield and sword at once. So your challenge is this. The next time you feel the pull, the insult, the provocation, the boiling frustration, don't let it fly. Breathe. Create the gap. In that space, you reclaim yourself. And here's the key. That moment doesn't just calm you. It also gives you a mirror. Because in the stillness, you stop reacting blindly and start seeing what your emotions are really trying to tell you. That is the second rule. Rule 2. The mirror of truth. Emotions as reflections. Seneca once warned, anger is a kind of temporary madness, and like madness, it distorts, it blinds, it scrambles what is real. Your anger, your jealousy, your fear, they rarely show you the world as it is. Instead, they show you yourself. They are not windows opening outward, but mirrors turning inward, exposing the fractures you would rather not face. Imagine leaning over a mirror that has been cracked. The reflection staring back is warped, twisted, broken. You might mistake the distortion for truth, but the flaw is not in your face. It is in the glass. Emotions work the same way. When rage surges through you, when envy burns, when anxiety takes hold, the distortion is not out there. The world has merely tapped the glass. The shatter lines were already within. The Stoics called emotion a judgment, a belief you have about what is good or bad, what is fair or unfair, what threatens or rewards you. Modern psychology adds another layer. Carl Jung argued that these judgments don't disappear. They cast shadows. The qualities we condemn most in others are often the ones we refuse to accept in ourselves. That arrogance you denounce may echo your own pride. That weakness you scorn may mirror your own fragility. Jung called this the shadow, the unowned self that surfaces in the very emotions we cannot control. Frida Kahlo never turned away from that shadow. Her life was carved by relentless pain. A bus accident shattered her spine and pelvis, forcing her into a lifetime of surgeries, braces, and nights spent immobile. Most people would have fled from such suffering, hidden it away, or covered it with masks of denial. Frida did the opposite. She picked up her brushes and turned the broken mirror toward herself. Lying in bed, body corseted in steel, she painted what she saw. Herself pierced, bleeding, fragmented. But on canvas, these wounds became more than agony. They became truth. They became strength. Her art was not a veil, but an X-ray, revealing the fracture lines no one else dared to show. And in that ruthless honesty, she found not just survival, but immortality. There's an image of her, barely able to sit upright, propping herself against pillows as she paints. Each stroke is defiance. Each canvas, a mirror held steady against the storm. She didn't beautify or soften. She stared directly at the shadow. What most of us would hide, she transformed. Her brokenness became luminous. Your emotions are asking you to do the same. The next time anger surges, don't rush to hurl it outward. Don't waste yourself stabbing at shadows. Instead, pause and ask, what is this revealing about me? What part of me is this mirror showing? That jealousy toward a colleague, does it speak to your own hunger for recognition? That irritation with a partner, does it echo traits you secretly wrestle with in yourself? The instant you redirect the question inward, emotion stops being madness and becomes teacher. Modern practices like journaling or shadow work echo this same Stoic insight. When you spill your emotions onto a page, naming them, sketching them, even painting them, you strip them of their power to ambush you. You stop being dragged behind them and instead start studying them. Like Frida, you can use the broken mirror to trace the deeper lines of your own soul. So here's your exercise. The next time you feel overwhelmed by emotion, don't suppress it and don't unleash it. Sit with it. Write down, what exactly am I feeling? Who or what triggered it? And what part of me does this reveal? Or if words fail you, draw it. Give it a shape, a color, a face. Externalize it until you can look it in the eye. For in the cracked mirror of your emotions lies not just distortion, but revelation. The Stoics called emotion a judgment. Jung showed how those judgments become a shadow. Frida didn't hide from that shadow. She painted it. The mirror reflects the wound, but clarity alone is not enough. You also need protection, a place where the storm cannot reach. That is the fortress. Rule 3, the fortress of inner peace. Walls no one can breach. Seneca once observed, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." That is the heart of the Stoic fortress. The understanding that the storms of the world do not break you. Your response to them does. Peace is not the absence of chaos, but the presence of an inner citadel no arrow can pierce. Picture this citadel. Outside, the battlefield roars, arrows fly, thunder cracks, voices shout. But inside, thick walls hold the silence. A single lamp glows steady in the dark. The power is not in stopping the storm, but in refusing to let it reach the lamp. That is resilience, not the fantasy of a life without hardship, but the mastery of keeping your center when the world tries to drag you away. Modern psychology calls this the locus of control. If it is external, you feel like life happens to you. You are a victim of circumstance, a leaf in the wind. If it is internal, you recognize that while you cannot silence the storm outside, you can always govern your reaction to it. This is resilience in its purest form, the fortress no one else can breach. Few figures embody this better than Harriet Tubman. Born into slavery, hunted by armed men, she carried groups of fugitives through forests and rivers under cover of night. Imagine one of those nights. Behind her, frightened families barely dared to breathe. Ahead, the sound of dogs and soldiers closed in. By all logic, fear should have consumed her. But Harriet's composure was unshaken. She listened to the trees, the starlight, to something deeper than terror. Her true refuge was not in the shadows of the forest, but in the walls of her own mind. A fortress no hunter could invade. It was from this unbreakable stillness that she guided hundreds to freedom. Her story reminds you that resilience is not the absence of fear, but the discipline of returning to your fortress when fear strikes. The world will throw its arrows, harsh words from a colleague, betrayal by a friend, sudden loss that feels unbearable. You cannot command the world to stop, but you can refuse to hand it the keys to your inner peace. So how do you build your own fortress? Not with stone or iron, but with ritual. Each morning, spend 10 minutes laying the first stones. 2 minutes of steady breathing to anchor calm. 3 minutes writing down 3 small gratitudes to shift perspective. 5 minutes of reflection, reading a Stoic line, or journaling how you'll keep your lamp burning when the day's storm arrives. That's all it takes. 10 minutes, 3 walls. Over time, you'll notice insults losing their sting, fear its grip, and chaos its power. But remember, this fortress is not a prison. Harriet Tubman did not hide inside hers. She carried it with her into danger, into action, into liberation. Your fortress exists so you can live more fully, not withdraw. The lamp does not burn so you can avoid life. It burns so you can act with clarity when life demands courage. A fortress preserves energy. But energy still exists, waiting to be transformed. The question is, how will you use it? That is the delicate work of emotional alchemy. Rule 4. The art of emotional alchemy, turning fire into fuel. Epictetus once said, "Nothing is either good or bad, but only our use of it makes it so." To the Stoics, this was not clever wordplay, but a radical reframing of life's most volatile forces. Anger, frustration, jealousy, grief. These are the forces that lick at the edges of your calm. Left unchecked, they consume you, scorching relationships and collapsing the fragile bridges of trust. But if you learn to harness them, those same forces can temper resilience, ignite creativity, and fuel transformation. The question is never whether the heat comes. It always does. The question is whether you will be consumed by it, or whether you will step into the forge and use it as your workshop. Picture a blacksmith's shop. The furnace hums, heat pressing against your skin, sparks leaping into the air. To the untrained eye, this is danger. But to the craftsman, it is raw power, an energy that softens iron so the hammer can shape it into something useful, something lasting. Your emotions work the same way. Anger can either corrode your peace or harden your resolve. Frustration can either paralyze you or sharpen your determination into steel. Psychologists today call this reframing. Instead of seeing anger or grief as threats, you reinterpret them as energy waiting to be channeled. Research on post-traumatic growth reveals that many who endure loss or trauma often emerge stronger, more purposeful, even more compassionate. What makes the difference is not the absence of pain, but the choice to transmute it into meaning. The Stoics knew this long before psychology named it. What matters is not the heat itself, but the direction you give it. Leonardo da Vinci embodies this better than most. Though we revere him as the archetypal genius, the painter of the Mona Lisa, the designer of flying machines, his life was riddled with frustration. He often raged at the limits of his tools, at patrons too narrow to see his vision, at a world that could not match the fire in his imagination. More than once, he tore his sketches apart in anger, scattering them across the floor. And yet, instead of letting that anger consume him, Leonardo returned to his workbench. He poured that same energy into new designs, deeper studies of anatomy, fresher paintings. What threatened to unravel him became the very current that drove his genius forward. Imagine him late at night, his workshop littered with torn drawings, candles guttering low, his jaw clenched, charcoal smudged across his hands. For a moment, he considers walking away, but then something shifts. He smooths out a new sheet of paper, and in a burst of restless clarity, 10 new ideas spill from his mind. The fury has not vanished. It has been reshaped. That is emotional alchemy, not suppressing the fire, but teaching it to work for you. You too hold this power. A colleague insults you. A project stalls. A dream feels distant. The heat rises. Will you let it scorch your inner peace, or will you channel it into movement, creation, progress? The practical key is simple. The next time you feel the surge, pause and ask, where can this energy take me? Instead of exploding at someone, write. Instead of sinking into despair, train your body. Instead of bottling up rage, use it to sketch a plan, launch a project, begin again. The energy will not disappear. It will only seek direction. Your task is to be the blacksmith, not the bystander. Think of anger as a single ember. Left untended, it burns a hole through the floor. Set in the hearth, it warms an entire room. The ember itself is neutral. The choice is always yours. And here lies the deeper truth. Once you master emotional alchemy, you stop fearing strong feelings altogether. You no longer say, I must never be angry. I must never grieve. Instead, you recognize every surge as an invitation to create. Each flare-up becomes a test of your craftsmanship. Can you hold steady at the forge? Can you direct the energy? Can you make something from it? Leonardo did. The Stoics did. And so can you. But remember this, heat alone is not enough. Sometimes it does more than shape. Sometimes it burns everything down, leaving only ash. And when you are reduced to ash, the real question emerges. Can you rise again? This is where the next principle begins. The Phoenix Principle. Rule 5. The Phoenix Principle. Rising stronger after every fall. The Stoics taught the radical idea of amor fati, to not only accept your fate, but to love it. Not just the blessings, not just the triumphs, but the heartbreaks, the humiliations, the brutal chapters most people would rather erase. Marcus Aurelius wrote that what happens to you was woven into the fabric of the universe from the beginning, and that resisting it is like a dog tied to a moving cart. You can either be dragged, or you can walk with dignity. The Phoenix Principle captures this truth with piercing clarity. To fall is inevitable, but to rise, that is your choice. Picture the mythical bird. At first, all seems lost, feathers consumed, wings collapsing, life reduced to ruin. But then, quietly, almost imperceptibly, movement begins. A stir, a spark of renewal, a shape forming in the dust. It is not a return to what was, but the beginning of what comes next. That is the Stoic vision of every failure. Not a dead end, but a doorway. Modern psychology affirms this wisdom. Narrative therapy and meaning-making show us that the stories we tell ourselves about our pain matter more than the pain itself. A setback is never just an event. It is a chapter in the story of your life. If you define it as the end, then it ends you. But if you write it as the turning point, it becomes the fuel for the next act. Researchers studying post-traumatic growth confirm this. Those who endure adversity can emerge not just resilient, but transformed, gaining strength, perspective, and compassion they never had before. Few lives embody this principle more vividly than Bethany Hamilton's. At just 13, she was already a rising surfing star. Then came the day in Hawaii when a shark attacked, ripping away her left arm. The ocean turned red. Her board was shattered. And it seemed as though both her dream and her future had been swallowed whole. For most, that would have been the end. For Bethany, it was the beginning of something unexpected. Within months, not years, but months of patient struggle, she returned to the waves. With one arm, she paddled. With one arm, she balanced. And with one arm, she stood tall on her board again. Crowds who watched her weren't just seeing a surfer, they were witnessing rebirth. Bethany did not come back the same. She came back stronger, with a story that became a beacon for millions. The shark had taken her arm, but it gave her a voice, a platform, a courage that could never have existed without that loss. And here is the part we often overlook. Transformation rarely happens overnight. The Stoics would remind you that growth unfolds slowly, like dawn breaking after the longest night. Rising again requires patience as much as courage. Now turn inward. How many times have you mistaken ashes for endings? A heartbreak that convinced you love was over. A betrayal that made you believe trust was impossible. A failure that whispered you weren't enough. At the time, it felt final. But what if it wasn't? What if that moment was only the draft of a new chapter, the necessary pause before a deeper, stronger story began? Here is your exercise. Choose one failure from your past that still lingers. Write it down as if it were a chapter in your life's book. Give it a title: the collapse, the betrayal, the winter. Then rewrite it as a turning point. What strength did you gain? What lesson lies hidden in the scar? What new path did that pain open? The act of reframing is not denial. It is authorship. It is the moment you take the pen back into your hand. Every fall is a comma, not a period. Every ruin is a chapter, not the whole book. When you can love your fate, not only in the gentle seasons, but also in the merciless ones, you discover a power that cannot be taken from you. This is the Phoenix Principle. Your story is not over. The flame is not the finale. Rise again, steadier, wiser, and stronger than before. The Stoic liberation of your soul. You have now walked through 5 Stoic rules that reshape how you face life's storms. The sacred pause taught you that in the space between breath and reaction lies true freedom. The mirror of truth revealed that emotions reflect your inner state more than the world itself. The fortress of inner peace reminded you that no matter how loud the chaos outside, you can build unshakable calm within. The art of emotional alchemy showed you how to turn fire into fuel rather than destruction. And the Phoenix Principle called you to rise from every fall, not broken, but reborn. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Life will still send arrows your way. People will still disappoint you. Storms will still howl, and loss will still leave its marks. Yet your mind, your judgments, your choices, your inner flame, remains yours to protect. That is the liberation Stoicism offers. Not mastery of the world, but mastery of yourself. Picture a single candle flickering in the wind. You cannot silence the wind, but you can shield the flame, steadying it against the gusts, guarding its glow until it becomes a beacon in the night. That flame is your calm, your clarity, your unshakable soul. Guard it well, and you will never be lost. The world will never cease testing you, but the fire within you belongs to you alone. Hold it steady, and no storm will ever break you. Now here is your invitation. Try one rule right now. Take 3 slow breaths. Notice the pause, the stillness, the space it creates inside you. Then type, "I paused" in the comments and share what you felt. Or, if you're ready for something deeper, write down one failure and begin rewriting it as a turning point. By practicing even a single step, you begin the work of liberation. And if this message resonated with you, stay with us here at Unshakable Calm. Together, we'll continue to guard the flame, master the mind, and live with the kind of strength no storm can touch.